So here we are today with another episode of the We United podcast. And I am so honored to be here today with a colleague and friend and somebody that I just adore, Sarah Rich from SupplyFrame. Hello, Sarah.
Hi, Jackie. I'm right back at you. Thank you for those kind words. Right back at you for sure.
So Sarah is the Vice President of Customer Success and Operations at SupplyFrame, which is a digital transformation solutions company dedicated to the electronics industry.
Yes.
And before we get into our discussion, I'll just turn it over to you, Sarah, to say hello and maybe just give a little background on SupplyFrame.
Sure, not a problem. So, hi, everyone. Thanks for having me, Jackie. Very, very honored to be here. I've been with SupplyFrame. It's a company that's been around since 2003. I was actually the third employee of the company after the two founders, and we have been dedicated to the transformation of the electronics industry right from the get-go. One of our founders and the current CEO, Steve Flagg, who has been with the company since its inception, obviously, grew up a bit in the distribution world and very much had a vision of this industry needs to transform and needs to think about how do we do business together years and years ago. This was a vision that he had. And so we have been dedicated to this industry right from the beginning and have been providing digital transformation solutions. So that can encompass digital media, providing awareness opportunities and solutions for companies to get out there and showcase what types of technology and components they offer to engineers that are designing in boards. We offer aggregator services where distribution companies can come in and plug into Fine Chips, for example, is a platform many companies are familiar with. That's a SupplyFrame website where distributors can showcase the inventory and pricing that they have available and to get in touch with buyers and people that are looking for procurement people looking for that information around the world, as well as actual software solutions for supply chain. And that can include anything from large scale manufacturing, management of pricing strategies, procurement. We have customers in the EMS sector that are trying to transform how they do their quoting and their supplier management process. So it's really end to end in terms of the solutions that we're providing, but it's all within the digital realm. We started providing SaaS platforms when SaaS wasn't even a word. So back in 2003, I think we called them hosted, or we didn't even have the word cloud back then. Whatever it was back then, that's been the world that we've lived in for quite some time. So very much at the forefront of this, what is now commonplace. Not only am I excited that people understand what digital transformation is, they know what supply chain is, all these things that we talk about now. This is what we've been talking about for the past 21 years. We were also recently acquired by Siemens. So it's now 3 years exactly ago that we were acquired by Siemens, which obviously is a very big leader in the digital space, especially for manufacturing. And we all know who Siemens is. We've all heard of them. Their digital industry software division became our parent company, and we are integrating within their world to be part of that organization and to add our expertise and our ability to bring not only solutions to life for their customer segment, but also to think about how do our solutions and services infuse together to create that much more opportunity and ability to transform. So a lot of things that we're trying to tackle, but always a lot of fun. This is the world we live in, and this is the world we love to talk about.
I love it. And I just feel like there's still a lot of progress to be made. I was telling you before that I hosted a panel discussion at the current event, which, by the way, I might recruit you to come to. And we were talking about all of this digital transformation, and there's still so many barriers. And it all came down to change, right? Like helping people through change. And I think, like, especially when you have a supply chain that has had so many seasoned leaders for so long, who, by the way, have done an amazing job, but taking that model and like really tweaking it is really difficult because you've had a very set model. It's a little sophisticated how the model works together. It can be a little complicated. New people coming in, it takes a long time. So those fresher faces in the industry, don't worry about it. if you feel a little confused, how
Yeah.
the whole process works with everyone together. It takes a little time to figure it out. But I love the idea that our digital transformation experts are going to help us to really streamline that as we go along in the future. Things won't be as confusing, things will be more streamlined and more easier to figure out, and quicker, faster, easier efficiencies getting to the customer. So that's my impression of digital transformation. I'm all for it, and very grateful for Supply Frame to be in our We family.
Yeah,
So
thank
as
you.
we talk about, oh, thank you. As we talk about digital transformation, the same
Mhm.
kind of things apply to what we're doing at We. You know, when
Absolutely.
we're talking about systemic change, we're talking about doing things differently, right?
Yep.
This is really difficult for a lot of people, and very understandably, right? We have to give a lot of patience and grace, but also keep moving forward with more evolved ways of doing things.
Yep.
And so that's why I think that we're such a good fit in our organizations. It's more of a mindset. It's a mindset for progress, is what I really love about
Yeah.
your organization. And
Appreciate
speaking
that.
of which, Sarah, we just had the summit. We had
We
the
did.
We Summit, talking
We did.
about change, talking about innovation, talking about really wanting to do things differently. Please give us a recap. I would love
Sure.
to hear your feedback.
It was
Thank you.
phenomenal. It was just a such a successful couple of days together. We rarely take the time to really kind of have these types of discussions and these types of mind melds and these types of events that help us learn, let alone in an environment where you have such amount of talent, such amount of energy and motivation to be part of the change, right? I don't think there's anyone that can say, no, we're fine. We don't need to change. We don't need to transform on any of these things, whether it's digital transformation or, some of these systemic changes you're talking about on both a social and a community level. Those types of things are all they're well received, or at least, they have positive connotation to them, but not a lot of people know how to do it. And so it does take intention. It does take thinking about these things. And I just applaud We for driving this and giving us the space to do that. My personal takeaways was I loved it, right? I love this kind of stuff. I love really thinking about, what really is the topics that are driving this. So the level of programming, the guest speakers that were brought in, the people with their points of view and their areas of expertise was such a wonderful kind of spectrum between very kind of meaty topics like emotional intelligence and getting confident with yourself on through to what's needed in this industry or in kind of the community of this industry as a whole, and how can we be allies to each other. There was an element of science in what is the science of women supporting women. I mean, it just was such a beautiful cross section, and we even got down into some really very specific things around how to build your brand online and how do you live your best self and maintain that healthy mental and physical well-being. So I just couldn't be more pleased with the level of programming. And when you're in these types of events, I just leave personally so inspired, so motivated, and really I think that what these visions, these dreams are very possible. Right. You always think about, kind of these large scale changes like, oh gosh, yeah, we need to do it. But where do we start? How can we actually make a difference here as an individual person? It inspires me personally when we have these very specific areas that we can think about, talk about, make a choice to take a step forward, be an ally to each other, be the light, so to speak, as we say, in a world of confusion or darkness as to we don't know where to go. We don't know how to make a difference. I always find that I come out of these things, certainly with this summit in particular, with that type of motivation. And it wasn't just even me. I was lucky enough to bring a few other framers, as we call ourselves, people that work at Supply Frame. We're framers that also attended the summit, and they had the same exact experience. We're really excited to share it with the rest of our group, with the rest of our little Supply Frame We chapter that we have our meeting this week, that we're going to share with them the takeaways that we had as well.
Oh, that makes me super happy. I'm sure the team is happy too. Definitely, we're super careful and thoughtful about the content, but love talking to people like you because all of our leaders across the industry, are the ones who help us understand what the relevant topics are. What are people
Sure.
struggling with? And so we'd
Right.
like to address these topics. But you said some pretty insightful things. You were on our panel, which I loved. And by the way, we will, be sending recordings of all this. So those who missed it, who attended, can, actually share. Some people might want to share what's going on and what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So really, first of all, you just said it here, but be the light. I
Yeah.
love that you said that because I don't think people understand enough. I was listening to some Brene Brown, and she was saying how, with all the research she does, right, on people and dynamics and behaviors, that when somebody is next to you, even if they're just somebody you're working with, if they're toxic, it actually gets on you. It's like somebody sneezing on you, and you really have to actively fight that off.
Mhm.
So what you're saying is be the light. It's
Mhm.
being the opposite of toxic, right? And it's
It
being
is.
aware of your behaviors,
It is.
because every single human being has the capability to be toxic or
Sure.
to be the light. And we all struggle. It's like that daily,
Yeah.
struggle. So speak to that, because here you are with Supply Frame. I mean, it's kind of a fascinating story with Steve starting this. You're one of the on the founding team,
Mhm.
growing this organization that is now purchased by Siemens. I mean, what a success story that is.
Yeah.
So
Thank
you
you.
would have firsthand experience of teams and people and working
Yeah.
with people. Let's just hear some of your insights on that.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you bring that up because I think, that the testament of our ability to do that, people will say, oh, it was a startup that lived the dream. Sure. It took many, many years. We started in 2003 and finally got acquired in 2021. That was many years of
Right.
perseverance. We didn't have it figured out the whole
Yes.
time. We didn't have the answer right
Right.
from the get go. We didn't know what was going to happen with a few of the bets that were placed. And so, when things like that happen, I know it gets said a lot, but to be able to learn from your mistakes, to be able to pivot quickly, to be able to see opportunities in front of you and seize them, even if it wasn't necessarily in your master plan, that takes courage, that takes positivity, that takes looking forward, and that's not always easy to do. And so the more that we can each individually get practiced at that, it's funny also too that you bring up kind of this concept of toxicity is when somebody sneezes on you, it's like, oh man, I don't want the toxicity. Just as infectious on that side, positivity can be as well. I think I made the joke even on
Yes.
the panel that the only thing more catchy potentially is COVID. Might be a little bit too soon on that joke, but it is that infectious where people are naturally attracted to those that are bringing the positivity to the room, right? You want to surround yourself with people that are uplifting and bring the light and bring the positivity, particularly when you're tackling difficult topics or challenges, right? It's easy to sit there and complain. It's easy to sit there and get mired of everything that won't work and why it's not your fault, it's somebody else's fault and what other people did. All of that is kind of easy to do. What can be tough is standing up and being the positivity and being the person to say, let's not worry about all that. Let's figure out what we can do and move forward. And you'll see every single time the level of support and the level of enthusiasm and energy that can create is absolutely what the world you want to live in. That's for those that get well practiced and comfortable with that, it can be absolutely changing. And I think even one of the team members talked about being able to speak up and stand up and say something and be courageous about supporting others and women supporting women. It is something that you don't even realize you're making a difference and an influence on others. So do it for yourself for sure. Better way to live. About living in the positive is a great way, but you're also making such an influence and impact on others that I think it's something that we need to make sure that we keep circling back on, let alone for our mental health, let alone for the health of our organization or company. All of it, it's all going to be influenced by positivity for sure.
Oh, I love that message, and really, I feel like too that we're in a culture of WIIFM. What's in it for me?
You bet.
And I think part of the summit too is when Lanon was talking about like being that contributor, right? Like approaching your work life like I want to add value, not just what can I get from this company, right?
Right.
But what can
Right.
I give and what kind of difference can I make? And also not, I think we're in a time also, we had a little bit of a controversial conversation about DEI. And, here we are, this women's organization, pretty much advocating for, but don't also use excuses, right? Every single person has hardships and everybody has barriers and everybody.
Yeah.
So not that we don't need support, but we really challenged people to
Yeah.
say, figure out your barriers through the positivity, through the community, through your emotional intelligence, navigate these situations, right? And not use certain things as an excuse, right, for complaining.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'll just turn it over to you because that was one of
Yeah.
my major takeaways.
You can see me kind of lighting up and thinking of some of the things that she said. I do want a t-shirt that says you can have results or you can have excuses. You can't have both. Right. I mean, that just
Yes.
struck such a chord with me. At the end of the day, there is a responsibility that we all have, and that is to work hard. Right. If you think about, at what you can do, what you can achieve, the contribution that you can make, at a minimum, you can be working hard and really putting in all your effort, doing your best. A lot of the different speakers talked about all that because we have responsibilities. We have a job to do. We're getting paid to do a job, all those types of things. Now, you think about that being kind of at the forefront of your responsibility and realizing that's all of our responsibility. As you said, everybody has things that go wrong. Everybody has challenges. Everybody's got personal thing. Everybody has something that comes up that was planned for or a variable thrown their way. Persevere, right? That is what is going to help you stand out. You figure out how to be resilient, to work through it, to be able to overcome, and having the positivity or the wherewithal to be able to kind of get through to the other side in a way that continues that path or that journey. I mean, that's really where you're making a difference to the company. You're making a difference to your own team, your manager, and you're making a difference to yourself, right? Because that is what you can build upon. So there was a lot that really hit home. It's interesting times that we're living in. We have, in my opinion, this kind of unprecedented state of being where, let's call it the previous generation, the old school of working hard and good things will come and just keep your nose to the grind, all that. Absolutely. There is still validity within that. However, though we went through something that was pretty life-changing in many ways recently with COVID and the pandemic, and now all of a sudden everybody's working at home. Now we actually are paying attention to how people are feeling about this and the mental health and all that, opening up to having discussions about emotional intelligence, vulnerability, things that Brene Brown brings to light. To be able to blend those worlds together is pretty exciting. We're all humans. We all get impacted by the people that we work with. I studied psychology all through college, and my emphasis ended up being IO psychology, industrial organizational psychology, because I just was fascinated by the fact that you work with people every day, probably more, and see them more, if not at least, if not more often than some of your family and friends. How do these people and your interactions with them not have an impact on you? Of course they do, and vice versa. So if you think about, kind of the collective psyche and the psychology behind what's happening within a workplace, of course that's going to be something that we need to take into consideration as we think about people's career advancement and finding the right path for you, and how are we going to best position everybody's talents for the collective good of the company, those types of things. So it's this really interesting blend of the two, kind of the hard work with the kind of the more the psychology side of things, that really we're at the forefront of figuring out what's that balance. That's up to us right now. It's exciting, and it's a little scary too, because we haven't really done this before. This is kind of a newer in relation to the work world overall. And so I applaud all of us for figuring it out as we go, because this is definitely some unprecedented times in that way.
Yes, and I think that we'll look back and we'll be like, wow, we were a part of this, right? But
Yeah.
I think, to circle back on that, I had interviewed Adam Norwitt before, the CEO of Amphenol, and he said something that just has always stuck with me. And he said, it's called work. It's not called play, right?
Okay.
And I think that a lot of people show up, we want to have passion, right? That we have
Right.
to balance, our passion, dedicating our talents to what we should be doing. But at the end of the day, you are going to work, right? And I
Yeah.
think that some of us we were just kind of bred with the mentality of you weren't supposed to be happy all the time and you had to just deal with it. You know,
Mm,
we were just brought up in a different time where our
mhm.
feelings and emotions weren't paramount,
Right.
right? It was all
Right.
about you have to do what you have to do. Not all good, okay, but I think we learned some foundational principles that we get up and do what we have to do every day, and we enjoy, we have passion in what we do, but we don't, you know, when I'm engrossed in spreadsheets and this and that, you know, and I'm not enjoying the moment,
Sure.
I'm still passionate about what I do and I'm not feeling gypped, right?
Yeah.
And so that is the one area I would love your feedback on. So are you seeing people coming into the workplace that have a mentality of, you know, I'm going to dedicate my passions and, you know, I'm just, and even when I have to work super hard, it's okay. Like, what are you seeing?
Well, I think that it's probably the biggest area where I would love to have some kind of level of education or being able to help people is we get people coming into the workplace that aren't afraid of hard work. We get people coming into the workplace that aren't necessarily they have passions, they have talents, but I think there's a difficult time. People don't always know how to put all that together. And so we get these folks that come in, these you know, younger people in their career coming in, maybe college graduates, even people maybe that are transitioning, you know, from a, you know, one industry to another, or a new role, and they don't have a lot of the tools that it takes in order to really drive and build your career. You know, it's funny you bring up that thing about work, as work versus play. You know, by definition, it should be challenge. It should be hard. It should have some elements of effort that are involved. I think of that when it comes to building your career. Right? Your career doesn't happen to you, or it shouldn't happen to you, right? Yes, a career can happen without you putting into a whole lot of effort, but think about how much more fulfilling it can be when you're building your own career. But again, by definition, building means you have to put in effort. You have to recognize exactly where it is that you should be applying your passions or your talents. What are you good at? What are your values? What do you hold as important? You know, being honest with yourselves, assessing if the position you're in or the company that you're working for align with that, having the courage, if they're not aligning, to say something and to make a switch either to a different role or ask for different projects, those types of things. I mean, those of us who've been around for a little while know, as we look back, that sure, there are certain things that happen to you along your career, and you absolutely should take advantage of opportunities, and you absolutely should work hard. As I said before, those are kind of table stakes. But to be able to actually drive your career, build it, and to be intentional about it, that I think is the biggest missing piece that we see, where people just don't, they're not necessarily equipped to do it. And so I think our responsibility as managers, as leaders in the company, is to help people to make those determinations, to help people kind of hold up a mirror, figure out exactly you know, what they want to be when they grow up. You know, I made the joke at the summit, but it's my tried and true here. You know, I always thought as I was growing up, I was going to be a Broadway star. I was going to be a Broadway dancer, and I loved the passion for the musicals and the whole thing. And I was Annie on stage back in the day, and my little brother was Sandy the dog the whole time. And I performed in our living room over and over and over. Killed it, by the way. I was absolutely phenomenal. But at some point along the way, I realized that I'm really good at operations and I'm really good at driving success of my customers. And so I pivoted into a new type of a passion. I still enjoy and go to musicals when I can. And you know, you let me know if you ever want me to perform Annie again. I'll write on stage for you. But this is what I find the passion: being really good at what you're doing, really putting yourself out into it, giving it your all. You gain so much satisfaction, so much of that same, you know, kind of emotional high, or that emotion, just the pride in what you do can come from doing what you're really good at, as opposed to necessarily what your passion is. You know, I know we kind of have this, you know, oh, if you find your whatever you're passionate with, if you can find a job that's what you do every day, then you'll never have to work a day in your life. Not everybody can do that. Not everybody finds that. It doesn't mean that you can't have that same exact experience. Figure out what you're really good at and go for it. Own it. You know, have your talents be your passion. And I think that is really an area that we could take some strides in overall, and helping people figure that out.
I love that, Sarah, because it's usually the same thing. If you're really good at something, you usually have some kind of innate, some
Yeah.
type of superpower. So
Yeah.
I do believe in that. And we did talk about, taking this like more of a overview perspective. We talked about SQ. And the reason we're bringing
Mhm.
this into the fold with our learning and development, so we talk about IQ, the intellectual quotient, we talk about EQ, emotional intelligence, we talk about AQ, adaptability,
Mhm.
and SQ is the meaning and purpose in life. It's not
Yeah.
about like a religious aspect. It's about who you are, what you value, what makes you tick,
Yeah.
what's your meaning and purpose beyond yourself, right? And
Yeah.
what lasting legacy are you gonna, what imprint do you leave in this world, right? And
Mhm.
so we were challenging people
Mhm.
at our summit to really think about that. And I really would say that at one point it was pretty solemn, like people were like, whoa, because they're not
Yeah.
used to talking about this
Right.
in a business capacity. But I
Right.
really love that, we're challenging people to do that, because how awesome if they could show up feeling that meaning and purpose when they're coming to the office, because they know themselves and they know what makes them tick, and they're happy to contribute in the way that's meaningful for them.
Agreed. Absolutely. And that's something that you can't manufacture that other ways, right? There's things that when you are actually tapping into who you truly are, there is a satisfaction, there is a happiness that comes from that that is you can't really do it other ways typically, right? And that's but it takes that honesty. It takes that kind of vulnerability with yourself. It takes a little bit of the, ability to be inward looking, and that again is not something that you didn't take a class at some point teaching you how to necessarily self-assess, be self-aware, all these types of things. You kind of learn it as you go. How much more powerful could we be if we did have these types of things that help us with that and guide us along? To me, that is kind of one of the pieces I'd love for us as a business community to continue to embrace this side and to help create these pathways for folks with that type of thing in mind, right? To be able to tap into these types of things, the EQ, the SQ, all of that, and not having it be a taboo subject or even something like, yeah, it's nice if it can. That's kind of what it's been to a certain degree. If talked about at all, I do think that we are definitely ripe for change overall, and this is the time to keep on talking about it, keep on infusing it in career pathing.
Okay, well, I love that. And I have another question. This is kind of a little more kind of squirmy in your seat, but it's like,
Okay.
I think of these DE and I departments, right? Of
Yeah.
course, we're advocates for that. But what we notice in a lot of organizations is, it's one thing to have some form of demonstration that
Mhm.
you want progress and you want to be this SQ kind of leader, and that you want to lead from values with, civility, ethics, humanity, all the things we talk about at We.
Yep.
But then we have so many organizations that have people that are not willing to get on board with change, or willing to get on board with what's going on, or willing to lead differently. And it seems like an inflection point in our industry. It's like when you're going
Agreed.
when you're running a marathon. I don't know if for anybody who has, you come to the sign and it's like half marathoners go this way, full marathoners go that way.
Yeah.
And really, that's the inflection point we're at. And it's like, are you getting on board for the full ride, or do you just need to get off and do that half? It was a great ride.
Yeah.
So this is where I'm saying, like, I feel like in our industry, it's not an age thing, it's a mindset thing. So
100%.
do we have all the right people with all the right mindsets, regardless of age and diversity and all these things? It's the
Sure.
mindset is the most critical. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, it was interesting. I think it was Dr. Andrews that brought up this concept of it's not an all or nothing thing, right? There are these kind of levels, I think she called them, as far as a spectrum in terms of individual thinking or willingness, or however you think about that. And that was the first time I really kind of thought about it in that way, and even assessed myself on where I am on kind of that allyship, or that kind of ability to kind of drive this thinking. And I think it's important to recognize that a couple things. One, it's funny you bring up the marathon. None of this is you do it, check, you're done, right? There is no finish line. There's always going to be this long-term, lifelong journey of evolution and transformation, because we know that no matter what, the world's going to change, period. Right. And so you're always going to be thinking about different ways that society and our communities and all of that need to transform. It is a lifetime journey with no finish line, and that's okay. Right. That means you're just in it for the long haul. It is a mindset. You are making a choice to take the longer distance, or however you think about it, go the marathon route, but that you don't have to do it perfect right from the get-go. You can take steps that lead in a direction. You don't have to be all the way into, I'm out there running my own rallies and events, and therefore I'm, just turning around and supporting another colleague in a way that maybe they haven't been supported before. That is a step in the right direction. Thinking about how you can individually be a champion for positivity on a day-to-day basis. That is a step in the right direction. It comes back to that definition of leadership. Leadership is not necessarily having a title, being a manager, being responsible for other people. It's anytime you're influencing others, right? You are leading. And that comes up, if you think about that definition, that happens to many of us all day, every day, in so many different capacities. How can you take those opportunities and showcase within your leadership your thoughts, your kind of movement in the direction of change and transformation? There's plenty that can be done. And I think that, we oftentimes think about these things as such a big ocean-sized challenge we've got to take on. And it's true. These are big things. There's systemic changes. There's a lot that gets wrapped around it, but it doesn't mean that you don't just start with the first bucket of water, right? And think about what you do and keep on going from there. So I that was one of the things that really hit home to me, during that session of women supporting women. It's there's a spectrum and there's a path, and it's one step at a time type of a thing. I think that is something when we think about, DEI as a whole, while I know that brings up, there was a lot of kind of eye rolls and groans and things like that, because it has become such a symbol for something it never was intended to be, right? These programs came out. I think it was Lennon Clark. She said, the reason why these programs were developed in the first place is because the opposite was true, right? We didn't have diversity. We didn't have equality. We didn't have conclusion. And I am a firm believer that to make change, you typically have to swing the pendulum hard in the other direction to make anything happen. It'll swing back. Things will kind of come, balance out. People will get on board. All of that, we're seeing that happen, but it's not going to be an overnight thing. It's not going to be an all or nothing thing. So to be in that mind space, to be thinking about how can I individually make a difference? How can I help influence the people around me that I can, even with very simple things, that to me is moving in the right direction. And we're seeing positivity as a result of it. We've never been talking about this before, with companies actually saying, hey, we want to be a part of the conversation. Organizations like we having sponsors of major companies in our industry. I see that all as positivity. We are moving in the right direction, but there's still work to be done.
Right. Oh, I love that. That is amazing. Oh, I can't believe how quickly these podcasts go. So we're pretty much coming right now. And I think we talked about nearly everything that we wanted to talk about and the more, but I do, regardless, Sierra, I feel like I could sit here and talk to you all day, and I wish I could. In fact,
I know.
You mentioned Broadway, let's just get together for go.
Yeah, we don't live too far from each other. Yeah. Let's head up to the Pantages and catch a show.
It's a deal. So any last thoughts before we sign off on anything else as far as your involvement with WE? Oh, by the way, before we do, talk real quick about this event you're having with DigiKey. I think that's pretty awesome. By the time this airs, I'm not sure if it will have passed or not, but I do think it's interesting to note what you guys are all doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm also a co-chair for the Los Angeles chapter of WE, along with Amanda Gonzalez. And we have been brainstorming about ideas that we can bring to life for different events, specifically for the LA chapter. As we know, it's kind of getting a little bit rebuilt, resurrecting. And so one of the things that we thought would be a lot of fun is to get folks into Supplyframe's design lab. So we have a lab that we had created years back that was built to be kind of a space for education, collaboration, learning, residency, an incubator of sorts where we have a lot of manufacturing type of equipment for prototyping, 3D printers, pick and place machine, those types of things that help bring designs and ideas to life. And so Magenta Strongheart is the director of the Design Lab. She also a WE member. She had the idea that we can host an event that she's done before where we actually have folks come in within this industry and learn how the heck these things do come to life. How do you actually place things on a board? How do you solder things together to make all of the connections happen on the circuit board? Those types of things. We brought this idea to DigiKey and they were all about it. They do quite a bit of work in the education space, within the maker community, within the kind of the enthusiast, if you will. And we're going to be doing an event with DigiKey where we're going to be inviting members within LA and anybody that happens to be in the LA area that wants to attend, as well as some of the universities that are local, to bring some people in, learn more about it. And we actually get to do some hands-on activity where we're all going to solder a little WE pin that we get to wear, a little blinky pin that if you do it right in the end, it kind of blinks at you. So it's going to be a lot of fun learning hands-on some of these things that this industry does. We're so thankful that DigiKey is going to partner with us. They're going to help with providing materials, and we're going to be there and have some fun learning and, like I said, getting our hands really dirty and on some of these things that we talk about every day and support. And the date for this event is October 10th. But these types of events, we want to keep brainstorming on how we can do events like this where we're really bringing some of the industry to life. For folks, because we just, we all agree that one thing that we can always do is continue to learn about our industry and how complex and how vast it really is. That's something that I think that everybody's excited to think about different ways that we can do that.
We appreciate that very much too. Sponsor companies coming together is always a good thing. And then also, I just have to conclude and say that, for the people entering our industry, these types of events are so critical. Don't underestimate what that can do for someone, because a lot of people don't understand or know if they're selling components, they don't know what that looks like, where it is on the circuit board, what that does, active, passive components. There's some basic things, and it takes a while. I would say it takes a good 2 years for people to fully understand this channel, how it operates, where they fit into it, how they can influence it. So these types of events, I think, are spectacular, and I would love to see more, more of this type of thing as we move along. But anyway, Sarah, so good to see you. Thank you for attending our summit. Thank you for the podcast. We'll look forward to seeing you again in the industry.
Sounds great. Thanks, Jackie.